right, welcome everyone. This is SDAHO's 2024 ballot measures update. Our president and CEO, Tim Rave, is going to spend about 30 minutes or so. It'll go brief. We'll get an update on our upcoming ballot measures. Then our Director of Advocacy and Reimbursement, Jacob Parsons, will also be joining us. As we go through these 7 ballot measures, Tim will pause at the end of each one to take any questions. If you do have a question throughout the next half hour or so, you can certainly unmute yourself, ask a question, put your question in the questions section or the chat. And with that, I think we'll get started. Just a reminder though, if you don't feel like you're going to be asking a question, remember to put your mics on mute to avoid any unnecessary noise. All right, Tim.
Awesome. Thanks, Steph. Well, welcome everybody. I'm glad you're taking a few minutes out of your day to just learn about ballot initiatives. We were doing district meetings the last couple of weeks, and it came to our attention as we were doing those that heard from several people that they were intimidated at the 7 ballot initiatives there are this year. So I had a request from a few CEOs to maybe do a in-person briefing, a very factual, not my opinion, not SDAHO's opinion, just very factual background information on all 7 ballot initiatives. And so I'm going to walk through those today real briefly. And again, like Steph said, if we get to the end of each one, I'll pause. If you got a question, I'm sure happy to try and answer it. I'm going to try and keep my remarks very factual, not tell you how to vote, just, well, 1, please go vote. And 2, there are other resources out there, and Steph will walk through that a little bit later about where you can find some if you need a deeper dive on any of the issues. And certainly I'd be happy offline to visit with any of you as well. So with that, we're going to kick it off. I'm going to start with the amendment to the Constitution of the state of South Dakota, which is Amendment E, updating certain office holders and persons. And really all this is, it would go in the Constitution and make everything gender neutral. So in other words, instead of saying he shall be the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, it will read, the governor shall be the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, etc. For every office, lieutenant governor, all of the constitutional offices. It will make the whole Constitution gender neutral with a title instead of a he. So that's all it does. And so here, a yes vote would support amending the text of the Constitution to make all male pronouns gender neutral or titles. A no vote would leave the Constitution as it is today. So that one's pretty straightforward. I'll pause real quick. Is there anyone on? And I see we have about 50 people, so that's, I'm glad you all jumped on. Does anybody have any questions about Amendment E, updating references to certain office holders and persons? All right, great. Our next one is Referred Law 21. This was a huge topic during the last legislative session. The genesis of this came from a carbon pipeline. And so there were a lot of concerns from opposition folks about eminent domain and some other landowner rights. So they spent the entire session in doing exactly what they did. They passed a bill they called a Landowner Bill of Rights. I'm not going to get into the details about the bill, but there are some highlights. It does provide for some money to go back to the counties and townships, I believe. I know the counties, it still obviously would reimburse the landowner or allow for reimbursement of the landowner to allow access for the pipeline to go through. And so this entire bill they passed last year, which was a fairly long bill, and here's what they said, provide statutory requirements for regulating carbon dioxide pipelines and other transmission facilities, and allows counties to impose a surcharge on those pipelines. So this one can be a little confusing. So this bill was passed and signed by the governor. What this would do, a yes vote reaffirms what the legislature did and leaves that statute in place. A no vote would reject that bill, and it would go back to the current statute we had before, or statutes we had before the bill was passed. So yes vote keeps what the legislature did in place. A no vote goes back to the way it was before. So again, I'll pause. Are there any questions on pipeline bill referred law 21? Okay, like I said, that one reads confusing because you're not passing anything by a yes vote. You're just reestablishing what the legislature did to leave it in place. No vote goes back to the way it was before. So, all right. All right, our next one is initiated measure 29. This is legalizing marijuana as recreational marijuana. And so, in fact, Jacob and I were just talking this morning. We believe that, well, I mean, really it's pretty straightforward. Either there is recreational marijuana that's legal or not. That's what you're voting on. And I'll walk through that in just another area in just a little bit. But Jacob and I were trying to figure out about taxation. Really, that would be the only other thing that would be out there. Is it taxed? At what level? How much money would it generate, etc. I would say that's a little fuzzy, even in the, some of the opinions we read. So we both believe that at some level it would be taxed, but that would have to be determined by the legislature and the governor afterwards. And so we don't know for sure, but otherwise it's as straightforward as it says. If you vote yes, you would legalize marijuana. If you voted no, it leaves South Dakota law as it is, which we already have our medicinal marijuana program that would stay in place. That has nothing to do with this. This would just allow recreational marijuana up to 2 ounces. You can also grow plants. You can grow 6 plants in your house. I guess for 2 people, you get 12. So anyway, this is what this one is, legalizing marijuana. Any questions on legalizing marijuana? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. All right, this is Constitutional Amendment F, and this would allow, and this one I'm going to walk through just so everybody's clear. This would allow the state to impose work requirements on individuals eligible for expanded Medicaid. So work requirements for Medicaid expansion individuals. Remember, that's individuals from 18 to 64 who can be on Medicaid dependent upon their salary related to the federal poverty line or limit. And so a yes vote would allow the state to apply for work requirements on Medicaid expansion individuals. A no vote leaves the Constitution as it is today. So I'm going to walk through that process a little bit. So if this was adopted, were to be adopted, I should say, then the state, mostly the executive branch probably likely, would ask for a waiver to impose work requirements on those individuals if they weren't working. And but that would be, they would be asking CMS at the federal level to allow them to do that. So first, CMS would have to say, yes, you can do that. At this point, they've only done it in one state, that's Georgia. That is not everything, this is all public information. Everything I've read shows that it's been a challenge for Georgia to even implement a program like this. It takes many, and in that case, I think 30,000 employees in Georgia are tracking the people that are on Medicaid expansion as becoming very cost prohibitive. Again, this is all public information. You can read the articles yourself. So they've been kind of on, off doing the program in Georgia. That is the only state that's currently even attempting to do it. But again, if the governor and the executive branch decided to ask for a waiver to require work requirements, that's what this would do. So yes vote would allow them to start that process. Doesn't mean it would happen, just means they can start the process. No vote leaves Constitution as it is. There are no work requirements then ever on Medicaid expansion individuals. So I know that one's a little confusing. Does anybody have any questions on this one? Because it's a fairly important topic. And again, we'll leave some time at the end too, if you want to ask, some questions if something pops up. So, all right, let's move on to Amendment H. So this is what they call an open primary. So it's a constitution, amendment to the Constitution establishing the top 2 primary elections. That title, interestingly, is a little confusing, and I'll explain why in a minute, but this allows everybody, regardless of their party, to be on the primary ballot. So on a primary ballot, you would see all the Republicans, all the independents, and all the Democrats listed for that office. You would have the choice in a Senate race, a state legislative Senate race, of voting for 2 of those. Let's say there's 5 candidates on there. The top 2 then, and regardless of party, could be 2 Republicans, could be 2 independents, could be 2 Democrats, would fall to the general election, and you'd be voting on them like we're going to next week in the fall. One of them would win out of those 2, then they would be, that's who your state senator would be in that case. The reason this is a little confusing in the title is in a House race, state legislative House race, where you have 2 representatives for the district, the top 4 vote getters would flip to the general election in the fall. You'd pick the top 2 because you have 2 representatives in your district, 1 senator. Everything else, that title makes sense. For US Senate, for US House, etc. That all makes sense. The state legislative rate gets a little confusing because there are the top 4 that would go to the fall. 2 of them would win and be your state representative. So a yes vote would put this in the Constitution and allow open primaries. A no vote leaves it as it is. And like you do now, you're in a primary. If you're a Republican, you get a ballot with just Republicans. You're an independent, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to pause there on that one because that one is a little confusing. So anybody have any questions about open primaries, Constitutional Amendment H? Okay. All right. This one is Constitutional Amendment G, so another constitutional amendment. It's an initiated amendment establishing a right to an abortion and putting it in the state constitution. So again, a yes vote would change the Constitution. A no vote leaves the Constitution as it is. And really, I'm just going to read one of the explanations because they do a pretty good job of outlining this one. So it really does it breaks down into about 3 bullet points. 1, during the first trimester of pregnancy, the state would be prohibited from regulating a woman's decision to have an abortion. In the second trimester, it would allow the state to regulate abortion, but only in ways that are reasonably related to the physical health of the pregnant woman. And in the third trimester, the state may regulate or prohibit abortions, except where abortion, and these are quotes out of the ballot or out of the amendment, when abortion is necessary in the medical judgment of the woman's physician to preserve the life and health of the pregnant woman. So that, I mean, this one, I would encourage you to read the whole ballot initiative as well, but those really are the 3 buckets that it basically boils down to. With that, I'll pause again quick, but yes would change the Constitution to what I just described, and no would leave the Constitution as it is. All right. All right. Well, we're on our last one already. So certainly would open up for some questions here after this, but this is IM 28, which is an initiated measure prohibiting taxes on anything sold for human consumption. A yes vote would adopt this measure. A no vote would leave South Dakota law as it is. So I'm going to walk through this one a little bit more in detail. So I think the human consumption part is the confusing part, and one of the things that makes the potential impact on the state budget much greater. So really, I think the again, genesis of this would go back to last session. The governor had proposed what I would call pure grocery tax repeal. So removing any taxation on groceries. that was, fairly well defined. So just think normal groceries that you, want and need in the grocery store, but not alcohol, not tobacco, not anything else, just groceries. So, that did not get through the legislative session. This ballot initiative came forward and, they put the word human consumption. I'm not sure why. I didn't write it and I haven't talked to the individual who did, but they put the word human consumption. Without being defined, it gets very broad, as you might imagine. Things that people consume besides grocery, candies, paper products, alcohol, tobacco. And so the impact on the state budget would be significant. Again, public information, our legislative research council at the state has written a paper about this. I encourage you to look at that. Steph will talk about that in a minute. But you know, it can be anywhere up to $600 million impact on the state revenues. Think about that, where we only get about $2.5 billion of revenue total every year. You remove $600 million from that, there are going to be ramifications. Again, that's a fact. What those are yet to be determined, but there would be a significant impact on the state budget going forward. So I think, you know, I don't know how this all plays out. I think to get to 600 million, you probably have to include gasoline tax. Again, the broad definition of human consumption leaves that open for interpretation. I feel like that might be a stretch goal, but you know, if you start talking about alcohol, tobacco, etc., 300 million really is, again, kind of the number being kicked around, but still significant impact on the state revenues. So anyway, that's initiative measure 28. Again, I'll pause here. I guess now I'll pause not only here for questions on that one, but any questions you have.
Hey, Tim, this is Tony and Gregory. Can you hear me?
I can, you bet.
Hey, thanks for the update, sir. I appreciate this. So when we talk to our boards and our community stakeholders, is SDAHO taking an official position on any of these, or is there any, and I know initiative measure, the last one you went over is an important one. We talked about that at our last SDAHO meeting, but is there like a yes, no advice on any of these that you'd like to highlight for us?
We are not, again, Tony, as you well know, with the vast membership we have, it was hard to come to consensus on some of these. And so that puts the association in a position of neutrality.
Fair enough.
And so I think that's, like I said, I just want to be very factual about the dollar impact, especially on IM 28. And again, a personal choice on how you vote, but just know that that is a significant amount of money and it would impact the state budget. Again, yet to be determined. And I think, Tony, that's part of the reason we, again, didn't take a position on some of these, because we don't know that they're going to cut Medicaid. I mean, we can make lots of assumptions. We just don't know what that would look like on the backside of passage, frankly, of any of these bills, the impact on healthcare. So that was another reason for our neutrality as well.
Okay. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, great. No, great question. Thank you. Any other questions? I hope you guys found this helpful. You know, it is hard, and especially, I'm sure some of you have early voted already, but I've been talking to several people that have voted. I'm kind of an election purist, so I'm going Tuesday morning to vote because I like doing it in person, but I'm weird. So I know, but I've talked to a lot of people that have early voted, and it takes a good 10 minutes for people that are even educated or taking the time to read all of the ballot initiatives before you get there. I can't imagine how long it would take if you walked in not knowing these. And so I think that was part of the comment. Like I said, I'd heard intimidated a couple of times at the district meetings to go in and look at those 7. And, you hate to not vote on them just because you don't know them. So I just thought it'd be helpful to do this. And then I'll let Steph wrap up here, because I know we're going to keep this open. Thank you guys, appreciate that. And again, you always reach out to us and ask me questions anytime. So with that, I'll kick it over to Steph to kind of wrap it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everyone for tuning in today. Good information. One of the things we always try to push our members or any voters to is our Secretary of State's election webpage. We put it up there. It outlines exactly what Tim talked about. It also includes the original filing of these amendments and initiatives as they were submitted to our Secretary of State. And our Attorney General's explanation is also included on that webpage. So if you have the opportunity, go check it out, sdsos.gov/elections-voting. And with that, as Tim mentioned, if you have any questions as we get closer to Election Day, we all know how to get a hold of Tim. You can always reach out to myself or Jacob Parsons as well. And with that, I think we'll wrap it up and give
Awesome.
everyone back their afternoon. Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
thanks, everybody. Take care.